if we were going to make some of these log rafts, we need to have a way to attach these logs together, okay? We didn't use rope and lash them together. What we would have is we would line these logs up side by side in length fashion, and then we would have a long pole that would lay across this. You can almost pretend this pike pole would be pretty similar to a type of a lash pole that we would use, and it would go across the length of these logs that would be going this direction. But what we needed is we needed to make some wooden dowels or some wooden pins, and we'd also need to drill a whole bunch of holes, because we would need on each side of this wooden lash here, or wooden pole, we need to drill a hole here and drill a hole here, and then we would bend a thin piece of oak around this, and that would be kind of like our staple of sorts. Okay, and we'd hammer that in with the pins beside it, so we'd pin that wood down. But we need to make holes, and they didn't have power tools back then. Power tools back then were all hand tools, so you needed to use this tool. This is called a raft auger, and they had different dimensions depending on the kind of holes that you were making. This one's about a little over an inch, about an inch and an eighth. And what you do is you just drill a hole where you needed it on the end of this log, like this. Now when you first do this and you go down 6 inches and you think, oh boy, this is a load of fun, you know? But you got about 200 of these to make. And it doesn't always cut this nice and easy. Okay? Anybody want to try? How about you come on up here first? One hand here, one hand here. This goes to the right. The key is trying out, he's kind of short, that's okay though. But the key is you want to try and keep this pole as vertical as you can. Alright, and you're going to probably need about a good 6 inches down to make sure your pin doesn't come out. Okay? Very good, thank you. What's the name of this tool? Raft auger, very good. Now a couple years ago I was fortunate enough to help build a log raft they were making for, I believe it was the bicentennial of Kerwinsville. And we made a scale size log raft, 120-foot log raft, and built the whole thing. And I didn't get a chance to float down it, but a number of guys did get a chance to float down on that raft. And there hadn't had anything happen like that on the Susquehanna River drainage for quite a long time. So it was a pretty historic event. But these tools do work. It just takes a little bit of time to do that. Now if we weren't going to make a log raft out of this, let's say we wanted to make a barn beam, you know, a support for a house per se. When we start, we've got a circular log, okay? But we're just not going to take that circular log and stick it in your house. It's got to be presentable, okay? And so we're going to need to work this circular log into a square log. So the first thing we need to do is we need to take the bark off of it. So to take the bark off of it, first thing you have to do though is you have to split the bark down the center of the tree. Now I already got really all the bark off this tree, but what you would do is you'd use an axe. We've got many different kinds of axes. Okay. The one I'm going to use is this axe, and this is just what we would call a simple single bit axe. Okay, single bit because obviously it just has one blade on the side. The other kind of axe you might see loggers use would be a double bit axe. It's got blade on each side. Okay, we can use either one. I'm just going to use this single bit here. Kind of give you an idea. If there's bark on this circular tree, I've got to make a cut all the way down the center of this tree. You pretend the bark being on here, all the way down the center. And once I have that bark cut down, just in the axe depth just cut so it's going to split that bark, then I'd use this tool to take the bark off. It's called a bark peeler or bark spud. Let me hear you say bark spud. Bark spud. Bark spud. Okay, so what you do is you take this bark spud and you would put it into that little cut that you just made between the bark, and you would peel the bark off. Okay? Now this bark's been on here quite a long time. This is actually hemlock. And if you peel it at the right time of the year, if it hasn't been sitting down too long, you would ideally want to peel, especially if this is hemlock, you try to get these in this nice long strip, and if you would peel this bark off, you just keep working the bark off and peeling it off, and try and keep it in one nice long strip, and ideally you'd be peeling this bark off in a nice large, fairly large plate, and you'd work the whole entire log and get it to peel off, and then you would save the bark. All right? Hemlock bark was prized during the tanning industry. A lot of tannic acid in there. They would use that to process the furs. Okay? Fur industry was a real big industry back here, along with the lumber industry, chemical wood industry, lots of stuff dealing with wood. So every part of this tree was used. So once we got the bark off the tree using this tool, what's this called? Bark spud. Okay? Once we got the bark off, then we need to decide how big of a log we're going to make, or how square of a timber we're going to make. Okay? If I want, let's say, a 12-inch square timber, then I need to take off this round side down to the dimensions that I want. I don't want 13-inch, I don't want 11-inch, I want 12-inch. So you have to get your square out, and that's going to take some time. I'm not going to do that today, but you would get your dimensions that you would want squared out on each side of the log, and once you had your end line, then you would use this tool here. I'm going to need 3 volunteers for this one. Let's see, how about you? How about you? Need one more. Anybody else? Yeah, bring her up. That's all right, we'll work with 2. Okay, take this on this side. Stand on that side of the log. You take this and hold that side. Okay? Now, I'm going to hold this tight. Right there. Alright, then you're going to chalk the line up. Get it nice and chalky. Okay, and I'm going to have you put your, see this key right here? And if you hold this down here like that, and hold that nice and tight down. Just like that. Okay, look, you're going to need to give him some slack. Okay, put it right on that V. Hold it there. And you're going to hold it like this. Here. We hold that right there. Hold that down tight. Got it? Okay, now I'm going to get ready to chalk this line here. So I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to let it snap down, and that'll mark off the line. You guys ready? Oh, there we go. There's the chalk line. Okay, so hold it back up. Bring it back up. And then you roll that in. So we got one side chalked off. Well, before I work on this, I need to sturdy this log off. I need to use another tool. This is what we call a log dog. It's like let's say a big staple, all right? But we use this to secure our log so it doesn't move around a whole lot when we go to work on it. Hey. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to cut notches in this log, kind of in a little V fashion, to the depth of this line. Because as I'm looking down from my eye down, I'm looking at this chalk line, and all the wood on that side of the chalk line needs to come off. If we had a mill, we could run this through the mill and be done with it, but we don't have a mill. We've only got hand tools. So to do it with hand tools, we use a chalk line, and then what we're going to do is what we call scoring to the line, which you chop down to that depth, the entire length of that log.